Got to hit the net. He does there. 108.5.
Goodness.
Wow.
This right here is Shea Weber, a man who had the hardest shot in NHL history.
Here's the three-time champ, Shea Weber. One away, 1-1. Shea Weber wins this event.
As just seeing him wind up at the point was enough for the opposition to start shaking in their boots, as not only did he have a hard shot, but the man would score goals.
Weber with a pass. Weber Shea Weber's been unloading some cannons tonight. Shea Weber with a ball.
It got to the point where Shea Weber during the 2010 Olympics would not only score off a slap shot so hard the goalie could barely react, but the puck would go straight through the damn net, which would make you think, when you have a 6'4", 240-pound mutant launching near 110-mile-per-hour bombs every single night, for us Canadians that's nearly 180 kilometers per hour, the man would surely injure a fair amount of players who dared to block his shot. And well, that would be an understatement. And today's video is sponsored by SeatGeek. With over 35 million downloads, there is a reason why SeatGeek is the #1 rated ticketing app. And with the start of the 25-26 NHL season, do yourself a favor and treat yourself to seeing your favorite team up close and personal. As seeing a guy like McDavid flying up and down the ice is just surreal. So whether you want to see Ovechkin and Crosby's last dances, the future superstars around the league, or maybe you want to catch an MLB playoff game, the NBA, or your favorite artist, SeatGeek is your answer. I just had a baby, so I'm on a budget this season, but maybe, just maybe, I want to make an Edmonton road trip with some of the fellas for just $130 for lower bowl tickets and the chance to see McDavid light up Utah. Sorry honey, me and the fellas are going to watch one of the best athletes in the world up close and personal. But here's the best part. If you click the link down below, download the SeatGeek app today and use code RobTalksHockey10, you'll receive 10% off your tickets. That's code RobTalksHockey10 for 10% off your tickets. Back in 2017, the Montreal Canadiens, led by Shea Weber, Max Pacioretty, Gallagher, sprinkle in some of the Warthog, Alexander Radulov, and most importantly Carey Price, started the season as one of the top teams in the NHL. Wait, no, they would absolutely dominate the league.
Back in the net. Puck rolls on it, scores! Two, hands it away. Pacioretty steps in, ready, set, scores! Lehkonen hanging around there at the side of the goal. In front, Lehkonen scores! And Montreal! Oh, they got 4-0 lead. Will this be fun? Yes, sir!
As they would start the season 13-1-1. They had goal scoring. Shea Weber was proving why the Montreal Canadiens had the balls to trade PK Subban in his prime for a veteran.
Weber with a pass. Shoot, scores!
On top of having Carey Price, who just a year prior would be the first goalie in decades to take home the MVP trophy.
Corner, works it out, Opposo, big chance, oh, what a stop, incredible, the price is right. This game is over if not for number 31.
Yeah, some fans would scoff at this team for not having that true #1 superstar, but this team was built big, heavy, with a defensive mindset that tends to pair well with one of the greatest goalies of all time, as they had all the tools to upset a more skilled team in the playoffs. As their physicality and defensive play and depth scoring, they had all the tools to contend for a cup. But then, the incidents would happen. On January 2nd, we would see the first incident. In a matchup against the Dallas Stars, Montreal would go on the power play. For some perspective, Montreal would specifically run plays to get the puck to a wide open Shea Weber. However, because the opposition knew that blocking a Shea Weber shot had a high chance of injury, they would have to instead try to open up the lane so that their goalie had a clear look on the shot. For most players, the defense would try to dive in front of those point shots. For Shea Weber, hell no. On this play, Weber gets the puck at the point. Typically the high side defender here, who I think is Josh Bailey, would attempt to get into his shot lane. However, he literally cowards away, stops dead in his tracks and looks to his defenseman, who's hopefully trying to help the goalie, who stood no chance.
For Petrie, looks across, Weber, one-timer scores! Shea Weber!
Therefore, the Montreal Canadiens, knowing it can be hard to create traffic in front of a Shea Weber bomb from the point, would have to instead strategically place their own players net front. And well, that was the role of Brendan Gallagher. And on this play, Gallagher would get a taste as to why everyone is petrified to get in this man's shot lane.
Hands it out for Nathan Beaulieu to Weber, firing. That one hit Gallagher in front. Another shot, and Gallagher is hurt.
As Gallagher would take a 100-mile-per-hour shot straight to the hand. Absolutely absurd, But okay, Gallagher's down. He did play a big role in the power play, PK, and scored some big goals. But this Montreal team was built without a superstar and was instead built upon depth scoring. And well, I kid you not. That very next day, during a harmless practice, Max Pacioretty, their only true star goal scorer, would block a Shea Weber shot and suffer a leg injury. Even worse, it would also be reported by Sportsnet that later this season he would also hit Pacioretty in the hand during a practice, and this was right after a Weber shot caught him in the face against Chicago.
Lost the handle, but Montreal regains possession. There's Weber with a slap pass, and it's deflected wide to the far side, and we got a player down.
Yeah, Pacioretty got it. Coming across the middle of the ice.
Because here's what's important about these injuries, especially when it comes to hand injuries. As someone who had nerve damage in my hand during my final season from a slash, you can absolutely still play, which Gallagher and Pacioretty both did. But you will also lose so much power from that hand. I didn't take a game off, but I lost so much feeling in my hand all season, to where my shot, which was already a muffin, became a double McMuffin with the hash brown on the side. As I just got slashed in the corner, I can't imagine the damage of a 110 mile per hour shot to the hand would do, and this is where things would take a turn. This Montreal team was built from the net out, and depended on clutch scoring depth to win these games. They could stop the puck, but they needed their guys to step up all throughout the lineup if they had any shot of contending for a cup, and when all guys were healthy, they had a shot. However, their offense would begin to shrivel, as Gallagher and Pacioretty would see a massive decline in goal production, and even though Carey Price would stand on his head in the playoffs, even though this team was built for playoff hockey, and would later on prove so with a cup run on the back of Carey Price, they would have absolutely no offense in the playoffs, where Gallagher and Pacioretty, still clearly dealing with some injuries, would be held to a combined 1 goal throughout the entire playoffs. Now of course there's many factors when it comes to teams failing in the playoffs, but when 2 of your primary goal scorers and or special teams players have substantial long-term injuries, it's a big problem. But here's the thing, this example is absolutely nothing when we compare it to some of the crazy stories relating to Shea Weber shot injuries, because after digging into the stories, I would discover something shocking. To give you some more perspective on just how absurd some of these injuries got, we now have to talk about the David Poile incident. As not only was Shea Weber injuring star players, his own teammates, reportedly one of his shots also hit a little girl in the stands, we don't talk about that, but somehow his shot would take out a GM. And if you don't know who David Poile is, he was the longest tenured GM in league history, 41 straight years as GM, 26 with Washington and 15 with Nashville. And during a practice in 2014, David Poile was reportedly in the hallway behind the player's bench, where a Shea Weber slap pass, and I'm not even joking, would somehow deflect behind the bench into the hallway and strike David Poile right in the face, where the man would break his orbital bone. He required 40 stitches and get this, is permanently blind in one eye. There's even rumors that he has a glass eye. Can't confirm. Like, you can't make this stuff up. It's absurd. And this event would transpire right after Shea Weber had the unfortunate luck of injuring 2 of the Nashville Predators stars. Because in 2009, Nashville was in a very similar situation as Montreal. They had one of the top goalies in the league in his prime in Pekka Rinne.
What a save by Rinne! And then it will shut quickly. More vintage Pekka.
They had one of the best decors in the league, led by Weber, Ryan Suter, and Dan Hamhuis. Yeah, we know who Weber is, but people forget how crazy good Ryan Suter and Hamhuis were in their times. Keep in mind, at this point, they also had Roman freaking Josi and Ryan Ellis in the system.
Hockey League Josi with the precision. Look at Roman Josi battle.
Roman Josi with another 4-point night.
And just like Montreal, they were a team built from the net out, with depth scoring throughout the lineup. But here's where it's different. Jean-Pierre Dumont, Jason Arnott, and Steve Sullivan were all veterans at the tail ends of their careers. And with that, they were also having huge bounce-back career years. This was their one shot at making a run here.
Weber, this shot goes wide. No stick for the goalie. Dumont scores! Arnott scores! Arnott got the shot. Dumont in front. And the Predators win it in overtime.
Because after this season, they would all see steep progression and soon retire. But as it stood, this team was built for playoff hockey. And if they wanted to make a run with this core, it was now or never. However, around the 70 game mark, and unfortunately there's no footage of these events. I've looked, maybe if you can find them, link them down below. But Shea Weber would break Erat's leg with a point shot bomb. And several days later, just like the Montreal incidents, an errant Shea Weber shot would also break David Legwand's cheekbone. Therefore, 2 of Nashville's best players were done for the season around the 70 game mark. And here's where it takes a turn. Nashville, when this incident occurred, were in the playoffs. They would immediately go on a 3-game losing streak, end the season with a negative record, and miss the playoff cut by 2 games. This team, like Montreal, they've if healthy, had the defense, physicality, and world-class goaltending to make a run. And not only did they not make a run, but losing two of their best players would also force them to miss the playoffs altogether. So when this happened in Montreal, it was a literal repeat of the exact same events that just transpired in Nashville. And who knows how many players and teammates Shea Weber would injure throughout the years. The man has entire YouTube videos dedicated to players who dared to try and block his shot. He has more documented slapshot injuries than some players have career goals. It's actually crazy, because around this time, we would also see the evolution of the point shot. For a long time, the game plan was to put a body in front of the net, take away the goalie's vision, and hope and pray the defenseman could hit the net with speed. Now, this is still a thing, of course. However, with the increasing size of goalies, players would begin to set up deflection plays, where instead of just trying to hit the net, defensemen would start launching low shots with the hopes of 2 to 3 deflections on the way, thus giving these crazy athletic goalies no chance to react. And because of this, we would see a big spike in block shots over the years, which also just so happened to coincide with the amount of Shea Weber injuries from his shots around this time. And because of this, equipment companies would have to start designing modified padding to absorb these shots, as trying to block a 110-mile-per-hour shot and hoping it just hits that bulky piece of equipment just wasn't enough, as there are now dedicated shot blocking roles on every team. Could you imagine the mental warfare that would take place having to see Shea Weber line up for a shot, knowing that you were paid exactly to get in front of it?
Got it to Radulov, goes back for Weber, fires, big block by Magnieto. To Weber, firing, that one hit Gallagher in front, another shot, and Gallagher is hurt.
Nicely, it comes back to Markov. Weber, one-timer, score! Big chance, and they score! It's Weber! For a big shot, and that came up, and that hit Vlasic. Down he goes.
Line, Markov for Weber, scores!
Pass over to Weber, and he puts it right in the wheelhouse. Look at Weber, lets it go, and this is going to get tipped.
I'd really appreciate a like on this video. A big shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring today's video. And as always, thanks for watching.